So I've been around for a while. I tend to, for that while, I've also been a consultant for quite a number of years, and I've found out really early in my career that I don't have this performance appraisal thing yearly, and that I need to work on my own development and make my path as best as I can. And in the course of doing that, what I discovered was if I looked a year or two ahead, ahead in terms of trends, that I could be able to map out, and so far, I've been pretty darn right. I've hit the right spots at the right place. There's a couple of things, and I've known Kevin for probably about 20 of those 30 years I've been working, and he was the first one to introduce me to Agile, and at that time, I was like, oh yeah, right? And Agile is probably one of those things I haven't got on big as the bandwagon as most of everything, but I've been pretty good at some of the other stuff. And this spring was when I was doing that looking out 1 or 2 years down the road, and I thought that would make a great presentation. So, and that's where I came up with what should be on your radar. And actually, funny enough, Sandra's topic of change management, that's my next certification I'm working on in early in 2018. So it's kind of like, okay, I'm still lined up pretty much. So we can't talk about the future without talking about the past. And I know you're going to get this presentation. You can print it out all on one page, and it looks beautiful. So if you want to mesmerize someone, this is kind of the history of project management, or the evolution of project management over 2 pages. And I want to give kudos to Mark Kozak-Olin, who's also part of Procept, the process team, and wrote this book called The History of Project Management. So I got some of the stuff there, and some of the stuff a little bit more recently from other spaces. So I started in 1900s just because I didn't think I want to go all the way back to the pyramids. But project management, literally, not necessarily being called project management, has been around like forever. As soon as somebody started making a plan on the ground as to what they were going to do next, that's where project management started. So a couple of events on this first page here. Scrum and Six Sigma, 1986. So that's still fairly recent. And then Waterfall, 70s before that. Project Management Institute, 1969. So those are kind of, they've been around. The first PMBOK that is truly kind of in the version that we know now, 1987. There's been a couple of articles before that that led to it. So what else? Prince 2, 1996. So for those of you not familiar, that's very popular UK. It comes from the UK, literally from their acquisition department, and it's like a methodology. Very nice thing to add to your set of qualifications, I might add, if you want to. The year 2000. Y2K was one of the biggest maker of project managers out there. That year, everybody ended up being a project manager that they had to do something. Change management at that time was also very prevalent, and a lot of change management industries started out around there. The Agile Manifesto 2001, which was actually rewritten and kind of modified very recently. And then in terms of PMBOK, we had the new one that just dropped in September, and the one before that. So every kind of 4 years, that's what I do for about 3 months. I rework all the materials that I've ever worked on. And we're here right now at that version 6, and we're at this point in time. I haven't included a whole lot of other stuff that's coming out of the woodwork, like artificial intelligence, all of this stuff that's going to be kind of piling up over here in the horizon. And that's what we're going to need to kind of discover where you best fit. and where you want to fit as things are going on. So I'm going to talk about 5 different areas that you should kind of be, the last one there is actually people. Sorry, the screen is being cut off. So I'm going to start with the ever-changing technologies. I don't know if you're like myself. I pick up an app or I pick up something and I start learning about it, and then 2 seconds later, oh, there's a better one. What did I just spend like 3 weeks trying to figure this out, and then there's a better one. So I don't know if you can catch up. I don't think you can. You can do your best at least to be knowledgeable about some of the best ones out there. Right now, we'll talk about this, like social media is kind of really big in terms of apps and kind of that development. We're also going to talk about Agile, because I need to talk about Agile as being out there and continuing to be out there. Certifications and standards. There's a lot of movement around those, and we're going to talk about those and what does it mean. The biggest area to keep an eye on, I would say, would be business models. So where are organizations going to? What are they looking at, like strategically speaking, and how is that going to intersect with project management? And then the last one, we're going to talk about people-oriented stuff. So ever-changing technology, there's this project management, we were at 1.0, and then all of a sudden social media came in and we're at 2.0. And then there's this automation, artificial intelligence, all this stuff that's apparently going to take us into the 3.0 and beyond world. Industry-wise, you probably have seen stuff like the IoT, Internet of, like the Internet of Things, and then you've also probably heard about the concept of Industry 4.0, where it's more automated, and you have a more process that are like defined and already kind of, all technology driven as opposed to human driven. By the end of not too long from now, you will see that a lot of people are also switching how they do the stuff that they used to do in terms of project management. I remember my sponsor always telling me, well, no, you've got to be in the office because you got to watch over the project being done. And now, location doesn't really mean anything or not that much anymore. I remember where every team had to be co-located. If you had a good project, it meant that you brought people in, vacated a floor, and you took over that floor, and that was your domain until the project was done. They don't do that anymore. You got virtual teams, and we're going to talk about those more. So all of that is changing. Attached to that is technology. And the way to be successful at it is really taking advantage as much as you can as all those technology with communication especially to keep people connected, keep people feeling that they're together on the same project team even though they're dispersed everywhere. There's still, and that's kind of a weird statistic, but there's still kind of 25% of teams that rely on face-to-face in the same room meetings. And that is kind of goes against sort of that other grain, but I kind of understand that a little bit because face-to-face is still by far the best means of communication. It's where you can hear the intonation in my voice, right? That Mayabrian concept of, your message is carried by 7% of your words and 38% of your intonation and your body language. You don't get all of those if you start doing those, conference call type of meetings and stuff like that. Like, for example, Sandra's presentation was great this morning, but you can see Sandra's face. So you didn't know, although you could tell from her voice, that she was like smiling and she was happy to do this. Some people have still a problem with that, and they need that kind of face-to-face to be grounded a little bit more. So we're going to get into, the 2.0 and beyond. Wikis, collaboration software is most of that stuff around information is at the basis of that movement. Next thing, we talked about cloud computing before. Cloud computing allows us to move, right? It allows us not to be attached to a specific server in the office. So that's kind of a big one in terms of adjustments of where you get your data. And the other thing around that, though, is there's nothing that's kind of safe by itself. The thing that it contributes to is it makes us a lot more, looking at privacy and safety and how do we access the media and trying to keep confidentiality for our clients and all that kind of stuff, still using the new technology that's out there. And that's like a balance. That's quite the balance to try to work on. The mobile apps mean that, yes, people are going to be mobile. So either on the phone or on a tablet or on a laptop somewhere, you have the equivalent of Microsoft Project now. And you have equivalent of other tools and tasks and stuff that you could do. And Microsoft Project has realized this, and they're finally, if you're looking for the next version, bringing in Agile stuff in there. They actually, apparently, I haven't seen it, but they have a Kanban board. So I can't wait to see what that's going to look like. But Microsoft Project has been the same old kind of default. When they moved to the server version, one of the things that happened, they added a little bit more functionality and flexibility with the color, right? You could kind of choose different colors. I remember I had a PM in one of the offices I was working in. I can use more than black and red and white. I can have blue for my tasks for this group. I was like, and her thing was like, a Van Gogh painting by the time that she was done. So some people find, functionality where other people's might not, but it's okay. But apps, keeping track with the apps is really, really difficult. I was learning this little Basecamp. Does that anybody's work with Basecamp? I was learning Basecamp. I was really happy with Basecamp. Then somebody says, oh no, that other one. Downloaded that other one. Where were you all my life? And now apparently there's another new one, and that's even better. So I was like, okay, so where do you draw the line? And that's what you have to think of when you're developing yourself. Do you want to be a jack of all trades and a master of none? Or do you want to be kind of more specialized in some of the stuff that you're doing? So it's kind of looking at it, but at least go and look and go and visit, and look at the different names so that it's not a surprise when somebody starts talking to you about one of those wonder apps out there. Trello. Anybody uses Trello? Trello is this amazing app which was just started by this one guy that wanted to do a better to-do list. And I use that all the time to assign tasks and stuff to people that don't want to go into Microsoft projects and stuff like that. So tons of stuff out there for different variations of components of stuff that we do in project management. Big data, we talked about that too this morning. I wanted to say this, big data does not mean lots of information, right? They're two different things. Yes, we produce a lot of information, and that's more around like how do we handle that, and I'm going to talk about knowledge management a little bit later. But big data, i.e. what is important to us, and what should we be tracking, and what should we be coming up with KPIs, and what should we be coming up with, what is value added to the work that we do. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later too. We have moved from CIOD to BIOD, and BIOD is basically bring your own device. So a lot of organizations are now, because of the number of people with different devices out there, are allowing people to really be like, and I was sitting next to this gentleman who had 2 cell phones earlier on, to stop that sort of stuff from happening, right? Where you have like the 3 cell phones lined up on your desk, one dependent on the other. So with that though, comes the burden of, again, how do we keep track? And from a perspective of an organization, how do they maintain all this stuff, right? That now becomes part of that network, right? So you might have not the Lenovo laptop, which is standard issue for everybody, but then you have Lenovo, HP, like whoever wants to bring whatever, they can kind of hook up and kind of be on the network and have their devices working or expect their device to be working. That's the other thing. And that's another progression that's kind of been happening slowly but surely, but you'll see that more and more where people are going to say, well, you don't, like a good example, there's some organizations where the introduction of like Apple products on their network meant that they had to do like different things, and they were trying to kind of not, except for maybe the design department, right, that was doing a lot of graphical stuff. That's how it kind of started. And then people started looking at the laptops and like, why can't I have one of those? And it's sleeker and it's this. And that's kind of how it comes in. And then before you know it, well, I don't really like that cell phone. I like that cell phone, or I don't really like that tablet. So it does have an impact on how we learn, how we see things, and also on the IT support that we get in each of the departments. So that was technology. And I'm going to say one thing about technology. I'm a firm believer that a fool with a tool is still a fool. All right? And I say that to all of my classes. I don't want to teach you how to like work the little nitty gritty of a template. That should come when you have the knowledge, right? But given all of the stuff that's out there, you still need to be familiar with some of those tools so you don't kind of necessarily look too much like a fool. All right? Agile, nothing much more to say about Agile with the fact that, yes, since PMI kind of got in there and decided, okay, it's going to become a certification, it's becoming important. It is still a methodology, right? So we need to remember that. It's still a way of how we deliver a project. And there's tons of other ways out there as well. Is one better than the other? Depends on what you're doing. And that's what you have to look for yourself. Are you working in an environment where, yes, you're going to start doing those projects like with Agile all the time? Well, by all means, go and get Agile experience, get Agile certifications, and build yourself up to that level. If you're a person who's literally just going to be consulting, like for example, a lot of stuff that I do recently, and that's why I haven't kind of, I understand how to sell Agile for the right purpose, but the reason is I don't personally use it that much because I tell people what to do and then they go and do it, right? Or I give them recommendations on why they shouldn't use something versus something else. And I keep track of all this stuff. That's why Prince 2 is a good thing. That's why Waterfall is not a bad thing, but for the right context. And that's where I'm at in my development, but that might not be where you are. And you need to look at it that way. Where are you at and what's beneficial for you? So always the two that are being compared to one or the other, so I had to do it too. Agile is also moving. Agile is now becoming, I don't want to say less agile, but more encompassing of other stuff that you thought it didn't care about before. For example, risk, right? Agile and risk before, we documented some stuff, but it wasn't as deep and as big as a thought process. But now it's becoming that. It's more intertwined. Agile and change management that we talked about this morning. Well, we knew that doing Agile was going to bring on some change, but we never really considered how much the impact was as much as we're doing now. So it's being more cognizant that there's Agile as a methodology, but then there's how we deliver it in an organization. And how do we best be successful at that is to looking at everything. So I've heard lean Agile, and I've learned, a whole bunch of other kind of terms out there. So they're moving, they're changing. So, and then we'll see that. When the only thing that, and I'm really conscious of that, is at the beginning when there were some of the people that were trying to sell Agile to people, well, oh, that's going to fix all of your problems. Oh, you won't have to have, I remember the biggest thing that made me cringe was you won't have to have documentation. Right? Remember that? Remember that at the beginning? And then I went, how can you have a project and run it and not have any documentation? So that's why I wasn't quite sold at the beginning. So all of this stuff is also changing, and the fact that we're not selling it as a silver bullet anymore, it doesn't fix problem. Yeah, it'll probably fix and help you be more successful if it's applied at the right place. All right, so there's certain areas when you would not, bring Agile as your first kind of thought process for a tool or a methodology. All right. Certifications. All right, only source of knowledge is experience. All right, so I teach at a college, so I'm on strike. That's what being on strike looks like. So I teach at a college, and I've always had this discussion with, I call them the kids, but they're postgraduates, so they're 24, 25 mature students. So what do I need to have to make me into a project manager overnight? And that's their question, right? So I'm going to take 8 months of classes, and then I'm going to come out there, and I want to be a project manager, not a project coordinator. I want to be a project manager. What do I need? And then I go, so if you go and look at different applications for jobs out there, what did they ask of you? Oh, like 5 years experience. Ha! First thing, experience, all right? Knowledge is nice, book knowledge is nice, diplomas are nice, but experience is one of the first things that they're gonna ask you to be at. Then the other thing, forget project manager. When you come out of an 8 months class with no other background or experience, you need to think of a coordinator, right? As somebody that's going to kind of look at different things and just kind of not necessarily be managing a project, but you work your way into it, which means you gain experience. And they all look at me, oh, that's too long. So that's a millennial thing that kicks in. That's too long. Like more than two, actually, they used to say that most people switch jobs on a 3-year basis. It's down now to almost 18 months. And that's the thing that I warn my students about. Don't be like bunny rabbits when you're coming out, because it impacts you. If you keep on jumping every 18 months to a new job, to me, if I see this, I go, they can't hold a job. Not that they're gaining experience, I don't even think of it that way. But if you stay there for a couple of years and you stick at it, yes, because you'll go up. So standards, like credentials, and the way that credentials are changing a little bit. PMI is adding credentials and very specialized credentials. So PMP is still the mothership. PMP is the one where you're a project manager, you have led, directed, managed, controlled, closed project, and that's what they look at you having experience on, all right? But then there's more of an escalation and a different path to get there. So literally one of my students out of one of those classes, yes, I tell them, go sit for your CAPM exam. Certified Associate in Project Management. It's all book-based. It's all based on the PMBOK. It's what they've studied in class. And it shows intention, right? It shows to an employer, this is what I want to be when I grow up. As opposed to me, I grew up doing project management. I didn't even know that's what I wanted to be. I'm one of those, like, I could organize people and get them to do what I wanted. So, oh, let me put you in charge of that project. And when they saw I could do that one, then the next one and the next one and the next one came along. That's how I became a project manager. And I wasn't even called a project manager until probably year 6. A project lead, a project expediter, My favorite one was a stakeholder engagement lead. Oh no, actually my favorite one, partner expectation liaison. So yes, that's, yeah. So, but this is changing. There is a progression. I would say in the past like 10 years, that profession has become a profession. It's looking at getting recognized as such in Canada, so that, you know, on the census survey, you could put PM as a job or a title or a position. The US recognized it, the UK recognized it, so it's just, hopefully Canada will get on the bandwagon, but it's changing. The fairly recent ones on here, ACP, that's the Agile certification, so they have a specific Agile certification. PFMP is also kind of one of the later one, portfolio management. Which implies that you've looked at how to do enterprise project management and kind of look at it that way. PGMP, this is the program management one, and it had a slow uptake, and all of a sudden, like now it's like, who's gonna beat each other trying to be a PGMP? Like recently the numbers went whoop, and I don't know why, I keep track of the numbers for some weird reasons, but that's one. PBA is also business analysis requirements. And then the other ones, RMP is risk, and SP is scheduling. Those ones have been around, like after the PMP and the CAPM, they've been around. There was an iteration when I got my certification, was in 2000. Yeah, 2000, and at that point they add other kind of subgrouping that they were doing with, with Project Office. There was one with Project. I applied for it, Peter. It was. I'll send you an email. So, anyways, but then they got rid of those, and then they taught about the process really good, and then that's when they come back with those other ones. CAPM 2. CAPM came in, went back out 2004, and then came back in actually, and then it's more for that escalation that you're not either a full-on PM or you want to show intentions. The other one that has changed too this week, the one that's very large with the European group is the IPMA. They've introduced, they always add these levels, A, B, C, D, and now they have another kind of introductory one, and they have one that's kind of consulting. So they're mixing and changing their flavors as well. Prince 2 actually just released their new iteration, so it Prince 2.1, I guess, or 2 point whatever iterations. And then Six Sigma as well is kind of changing their stuff. So it's always in movement. And a lot of that is looking, like for example, PMI, they look kind of beyond a little bit and say, you know, what's coming up? Where could we kind of get and make sure that our PMs are aware of? Like Sandra said this morning, would not be surprised to see change management getting in there in the next couple of years, just because what we do as a PM, from the time that I started doing this work to now, I enter a room, I've got the word change tattooed on my forehead. People look at you as, okay, what are you going to do to us now? The only thing that is different now than it used to be then is at that point, I used to be told, oh, don't worry, you don't have to handle all that stuff. We've hired a consultant to do that, like a change consultant to do that. I think it's about time that we can all encompass run our own projects without necessarily having too many extra consultants around for stuff that we should be able to know and should be able to handle. To me, change management should be like conflict management, should be like negotiation on a project. You should be able to understand your organization and how it works or doesn't work with change and be able to apply it that way. But it's got to become that way. All right. Certification, well, no need to say, this is like the PMP numbers over the years. And I just started in 2007, so it keeps on going. Business models, important area. That's probably the one where a lot of the changes are coming on about. The first one, portfolio. Portfolio management is increased and hopefully is going to become part of the norm. And again, there's a bunch of different things at play here. One day you probably read in the news or on LinkedIn, oh, the PMOs are doomed. PMOs aren't working. Let's scrap all the PMOs up there. And I go, why? Like it took us so long to have some PMOs. Why don't we find a way to make them work? And make them work in an organization where they could be part of the organization and deal with some of the stuff like portfolio management and making sure that we look at strategically where we want to be as an organization and how do projects or programs fit in there, and really kind of tailor it and kind of work the two together and know that it's attached to a whole bunch of other stuff like resource management and budgeting and all of this kind of stuff in an organization. So if we did that all better and more cohesively, we're good. The problem is not every organization is set up the same way. And then you have those organizations, and I've worked in a couple of them, where they think that one PMO isn't enough. You need two. And I go, what? And a lot of times, one is client service related, and the other one is IT related. So don't you both do projects? Aren't you both kind of doing projects that impact each other? And then the first thing, if you're setting up a PMO, I've done a couple in my lifetime as well. The first question is, why can't we use my form? My form is better than their form. So the fighting around the templates, right, is kind of one of the things that happens. So if we spend less time doing that and more time putting better structure around it, we can really accomplish a whole lot of stuff around how we then look at how do we bring in projects in the organization, and from that point on, how do we analyze them and like make them a reality, and how do we prioritize them along the way. So that's portfolio management. I started my little rant on PMOs a little bit early, but PMOs, EPMOs, project management offices, whatever you call them. Again, I was Kent Crawford is one of the guy who's written some of the best books around project management offices, and he's been preaching this for years. Look at the structure, look at what you need, and put the structure that you need, not you think you're going to need 10 years from now, and then grow your structure as you're going along. And that's the thing with PMOs. People want to put you've seen all this cartoon with the tree, you know, what the client wants is just a tire, and then you end up with like a whatever hanging from the tree. Same thing. People start with, let's like put all the bells and whistles in from the beginning, and then we'll support it. No, start with the basic and then move and progress as your organization moves and progress. Some organizations are not going to go beyond just standard project management office that provides training and software and you know, and methodologies and stuff like that. Some others are going to become center of excellence, and where we make decisions around project and we link and we think about portfolio management. But you need to look at it, again, from a perspective of your organization and what fits in. Department alignment. We've always been told when we're studying for the PMP about the organizational structure. So functional versus projectized, which is a totally made up name. And then, you know, matrix organization. But nobody looks at what do we actually physically need in an organization for projects to be successful. How do we line up our departments, our people, so that they're not either operational or project, that they can kind of be both, and to get better use of resource management. And that is kind of a far way ahead. But if we were able to do that, we'd be much more successful at moving people around without kind of displacing too many people in the process. Benefits realization. This one is probably one of the big ones from a PMI perspective in the last few years. And if you think about it, it's needed, but I don't think anybody's got a really good idea on how to get there. And I'm going to tell you why. As a PM, you start out often with a business case. They'll give you a business case. Here's what we want to do. And either you or your sponsor or someone will create the charter. And we create the charter with KPIs and objectives and all that kind of stuff. And you start running your project, and then your project is done. But then all of this business justification, the measurement of how long it will take you to be able to actually physically measure to see if you've accomplished it, is 3 years down the road. So you, as a PM, who said that 3 years from now, you are actually going to, meet your return on investment or benefits cost ratios, whatever you're using. 3 years from now, you're not there. You're not even be in the same company, and there's no plan to carry you forward. I say that this new version of the PMBOK as a benefits realization plan that is created at the same time as the business case that takes us to the end part and says, now who's responsible? And how are we looking at that? And it's the first time that it's been added. And I think it's going to be a good thing, but I think there are some organizations. I've worked in a telecommunication organization recently, and literally what they do, the PM stays attached to that project, and literally somebody comes knocking 2 years down the road and says, now you have 3 weeks or a month of your time that you're going to dedicate to really prove to us that your project that you did 2 years ago accomplished its benefits. You can't always do that, but that's how they handle it. Like that PM literally stays attached, not for, the calls like this doesn't work, right? But the calls of, did we meet our benefits? Did we say what we said we're going to be benefiting the organization works? And I thought that was kind of cool, but then I started asking a little bit too many questions. What happened when your PMs are gone? Well, that's been a little bit of an issue and stuff like that. So I think we haven't quite gotten it. We know we need to do it, but we haven't quite gotten how it's going to go about, all right? So that one, if you're into analytics and keeping stuff, that would be a perfect place to have that position, I think, on a PMO, where there's someone that keeps on looking at that, is stable in the that or project organization, but then needs to look at it from a different point of view a couple of years down the road, okay? So benefits still, did we realize them? Did we use the right data? Were we totally hallucinating? Did the market change? Like, what is causing, did we achieve or not achieve what we said we were going to do? All right. The other thing that is important to realize is I think most every organization are starting to define project success differently. And that's an important factor. And it kind of switches our mind. Who has not heard of the iron triangle or the quadruple constraint or anything like that? So apparently, in 1986, Max Weidman, who's Canadian and is out in British Columbia. Yeah, Max? Oh yeah, he's here now, but like where he used to be out in BC. Yeah, he's got his foundation now. He's adorable. You need to meet him. He's one of the gurus of the profession. He called the iron triangle, and it kind of went from there. But people, and even PMI, have started to kind of go, wait a second, there's more to how we are successful at a project than say we were on time, we were on budget, and we accomplished the scope. What risk did we encounter? Did we communicate properly? And that has changed with not version 5, but version 4 of the PMBOK. You will see that they've taken that iron triangle reference out, and what they call it now is having a balance between what your objectives are with what your constraints are on a project. And that also changes how we work on projects. So are we like always going to put our top priority as achieving a budget? Maybe not. Maybe that's not what our stakeholders want. And that is also going to change how we do budgets, how we look at timelines, and all this kind of stuff. So an important kind of organizational thing taking place. Change management. Told you I was going to talk about it. And again, from a condition where you don't always need another one of you on a project to handle just the change component, you could be equipped with the right tools to handle that change, because who better than the person who's at the center of kind of trying to get it done. But you need the right tools, you need the right, like frameworks, you need the right information in order to do that. The new one, and this one I added very recently because something happened with version 6 of the PMBOK again that I'm very happy with. So my biggest pet peeve has always been lessons learned. Lessons learned, and the fact that PMI tells us this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. There was never a process around this stupid thing. There was never no mention of lessons learned, like documentation or anything like that. But you had to have lessons learned, so it used to be called historical information, and it sat into the organizational process assets. And I went, really? If it's that important, do something about it, and they did. So version 6 of the PMBOK, there is now a lessons learned register. Yee-ha, all right? And there is also a process to manage knowledge on project, and that is really important. And that's what I'm hoping is going to get us from this having to recreate that wheel all the time. You start a new project, any lessons learned? No. Don't know what they are. They're attached, like in the older days, they were attached to a particular PM because they were in a filing cabinet next to that PM, right? And then if you didn't know who that PM was, there was no lessons learned. Then, yes, people created a database, but then when they put them in a database, they sanitized them. We're not going to say bad things. We're only going to say good things, right? So lessons learned that are really good lessons learned, so that if I start a project and I want to know something similar from a past project, I'll get the real deal, and then I won't be surprised and totally shocked when something happens to me. And that could be about the stakeholders, that could be about the risks of the project, that could be about the scope and the time and the cost, anything to do with this project without blaming anyone. The finger pointing thing is the other thing, true lessons learned, that's just bad, all right? So now, last version, version 5, they started this process a little bit, where in the PMBOK, they went to this model where you can see it moving. Data becomes information, becomes knowledge, becomes wisdom. There's no wisdom in the PMBOK. We stop at knowledge, all right, for the time being. Hopefully, there'll be wisdom later on. But now, with this new version, they've added a process called manage the knowledge of the information of the project, and that's really project knowledge, sorry, and it's in integration. So it sits underneath what a PM should do. And this is going to, hopefully, I'm saying, hopefully, this is going to be really key to make us way better. I've presented a number of times on lessons learned and the fact that I just couldn't stand the process. And it doesn't have to be complex to work. And I think they're starting in the right place. The one input or output that they've added as a document is a lessons learned register. Keep a register as you're going along to capture your lessons learned as you're going. People are not leaving you when you want them to, and you're not going to always have this sit up kumbaya thing to do this. Just keep track of it And then when it comes to writing your closure report, all the information is there. And you don't have to do too much to it. Then put it in a place where we can find it, right? Without too much, digging. And then use it when a new project comes. And that's kind of the important thing. This one that made me just jump for joy when I saw that. And then the last bit is people. So they've changed interpersonal skills now to be interpersonal skills and team skills in version 6 of the PMBOK. So another good thing, not just about how the leader should be, it's about how we should kind of be working together. So that's going to help out. But in terms of people, if you were to ask like sponsors or people out there, what do you think the deficiencies are from project leaders and the needs is for those project leaders, and can we kind of fill those gaps? So deficiencies, having more time to do like coaching and mentoring, delegating authority as opposed to kind of doing it all or passing it all, and then leading change. So change is in here again. All right. Then the needs, coaching and mentoring. All right. Setting goals and expectation goes back to how do we tie back with strategic, more like high level in an organization, and then being able to motivate. Not everybody is able to do this. Not everybody can be a cheerleader. So, and those are kind of key and important. 21st century skills. So if you look at people going into schools and stuff, some of the stuff that we're looking at them trying to gain in terms of skills, critical thinking, creativity, innovations are really kind of high up there. Lifelong learning. If you think about it, don't stick somebody in a classroom for 3 years, take them out and then plug them in the market. Get them to work and do stuff as they're going along. So you'll see a lot of the college programs, I know this for a fact, are trying to have a placement, an internship, like something associated with a co-op, associated. And some of the programs that are the most highly attended in Ontario are those ones with the co-op, the placements, those type of programs, because you're doing and as you're learning, which is kind of the best combo. Then curiosity. It's really funny, but we don't nurture that a lot of times in even our kids anymore. Like we give them the answer because it'd be too long to explain it to them, right? But it's really fun. It's something that carries out. Then later on, they expect the answer. They don't go looking for it, so they don't know how to do fact-based research. They don't know how to question people correctly. Give me the answer, I'll be out of your face. But then you don't learn the same way, that way. So that one is kind of really an important one, all right? So those are kind of some of those skills. I don't think I have to tell you, but again, because I'm at college, I see it every day. People being afraid of math. Oh my God, I teach this risk management class, and I tell them, we are going to talk about probability distribution. You see the blood draining from their face. They start shaking. And I'm like, math is math, people. And I can tell you stories. I didn't do math my first 2 years of college because I had a teacher in grade 5, secondaire 5 in French, which is grade 12, that told me that I was an idiot and I would never get it. And I didn't do math in college at all. And then I went into the workplace, and then things started making sense. And then I went back to university. The first class I had to do, remedial math. And I went, oh, no, I can't do this. I was told I can't do this. I'm an idiot. 97%, university remedial math. And after that, nobody could tell me I can't do math. But these kids today, it's like, and then not just like 25 years old. And then like a multiplication, I swear. Risk, probability times impact, right? Probability is a percentage. Put a decimal point in there, they freak out, right? What's that? And the other day we had actually a half-hour-long conversation as to why a minus sign is equal to a bracket or to red when you want to show a negative. They never seen that. So it's kind of an important thing. I know the government is trying to put more kind of literacy and stuff around that in schools, so hopefully it's going to catch on. And those are kind of some of the ones to push. Like if you have kids up there, look at that table and kind of see. Not everybody could be good at everything, right? It's true, right? There are some people who are like just, whatever. Right? I have a friend who went to school and she did history and geography and English literature. Her son, chemistry, math, right? And she goes like, how do I help him with his homework? I said, you do your best, right? So, and that's kind of the thing around this is trying to grow our kids to kind of fit in an environment and kind of be more multi-capable type of thing. Virtual teams, kind of talk about that. It's not going to go away. It's not going to go away. What you need to do, you need to really, every time you talk virtual teams, you're talking communications, right? You have to amplify your communications methods and means and modes to make sure that everybody feels as if they're part of the team. This is one area what I brought in, one of those agile things, those 5 minutes like touch base type of thing, where like where you at, where are you, like when you have a virtual team, being more engaged so that they know that you're there for them. Talent management, again, we're changing and changing and changing. We have now up to 5 different generations in the workforce with us at any given point in time, all with different aspects and looking at things a little bit differently. So, and we need to kind of work for that and plan for that. Senior PM shortage. 2020 was one of those dates when one of those PMI, I highly suggest you read those when they come out. They're really instructive, those, like those articles on TOTS and positive profession, they call them. And they talk about that forthcoming stuff. And then, looking for 2 million project managers, and if not more, in the next couple of years, at the right level. That's the thing, though, is if we have a whole bunch of people that are newly minted, you can't expect the same delivery level than if you have people that are seasoned, right? People that have 25, 30 years, been there, done that. I'm not going to spend 3 hours. We're talking about conflict management this morning. I'm not going to spend too much attention. It's going to work itself out. And if not, I'll just kind of do these a couple little things and people will kind of, right? So that kind of sense that you get with experience that younger people wouldn't have. So it's kind of important. And one that I'm not surprised, but I was surprised when I saw the statistics. 40% of the American workforce is going to be freelancers by 2020. So consultant, not having a full-time assigned to a desk, location, all this kind of stuff. So, and that's, I've been doing this since 2006, I think. So it's not new to me. I've adapted, but some people are not good with that. They want to have, the benefits package and not having to plan for the tax man and all that kind of stuff. So, and it's coming. And a lot of people that are older are transitioning to that model. And they might not be kind of full on with that too. So it's going to create a little bit of tension there. So kind of be aware of that. Resource management practice, that's another big one. And this one is associated with the whole PMO, portfolio management, aligning of the business organization. If you don't have all of that under control, how can you expect to properly manage your resources and know, I have 2 programmers. I not burn them down to the ground because all of a sudden I decide to put another project down the pipe. And that's always, again, another one has always been a problem. It's becoming better because we have stuff like, yes, Microsoft Server, where people can see across more than just one picture of a project. They can see across the PMO if it's well maintained, but it's still a big challenge. And it's still something, just in the requirements, like for example, if you've written your PMP exam, you probably all love this line from PMI, not too much concurrent hours that you're working on projects, right? And then people think concurrent hours as like not too many projects, which is not the same thing. You need to be careful because you need to respect the number of hours per week type of thing is what they're trying to make you. But people think, how can I not work? I have 18 projects that I'm working, and then they start realizing, I have 18 projects I'm working at a time. And some of this isn't really managed at the right place. It should be managed like out of the PMO or out, or when a project comes in and it gets validated and from the project performance portfolio segment, that should be attacked there too. Not only do we have budget, but do we have the resources during that period of time to do that? And that's kind of not every organization is there, definitely, for that sort of stuff. All right, this is a list. I've talked to probably about 15, just for fun. I talked about like 15 people that have, I've had project managers working for them, either they're sponsors or they're in an organization, and I said to them, if you were to give me a list of what you expect a PM to do or be, what would these be? And that's where that list came from. So think outside the box. Be more agile with the little A. Not the agile with the methodology, but be more agile. Feel more empowered. Apply soft skills to influence outcome. Do better stakeholder management. All right. Be more strategic and not be textbook PM. Be effective and confident speakers. Develop change leadership skills. Have good role clarity, right? And then be more consistent in their delivery, get better at the art of escalation. And then the last one was demonstrate business acumen. So when I got this list compiled, the first thing I said to myself was like, well, it takes two to tango, all right? If you want those traits, you need to let us be those traits. So for example, be more consistent, where's the other one? I feel more empowered, right? So if you have a sponsor that's sitting at the corner of your desk and running your meetings, how can I feel more empowered? Okay, so it takes two to tango when it comes from that. But that list is a pretty good list, though, as to what are some of these things that you could tick for yourself, and some of those things where and then what's getting in your way? Is it because you don't have a skill set? Is it because you don't have some tools in your tool belt? Is it that you don't, or they won't let you do this? So kind of look at it and approach it differently, all right? And that kind of will help you out, kind of mapping out some of the stuff and where to kind of work on for the next little while.